The vast emptiness of space was interrupted by the sharp, rhythmic pulse of an anomaly, a signal emanating from a dead star system. Captain Aiden Cross stared at the blinking red lights on the Crimson Dawn's navigation console. A small but persistent signal, unlike anything humanity had ever encountered, echoed through the ship's communications array. It was faint, intermittent, but unmistakably artificial. A call from the void. "Captain, you need to see this," Lieutenant Maya Serrano's voice crackled over the intercom. Her tone, usually calm and composed, now carried an edge of urgency. Cross stood from his chair and made his way to the ship's operations center. Maya, a brilliant communications officer, had already begun decoding the signal. A holographic display flickered to life before him. The signal had originated from the remnants of a star system that had collapsed into a black hole centuries ago. The system, known as Beta 7, had been deemed too dangerous for exploration. Its gravitational pull was lethal, its stars long since snuffed out by the singularity at its center. "This doesn't make sense," Maya muttered, typing furiously on her console. "The signal source is directly at the event horizon of the black hole." Cross's brow furrowed. "Are you telling me this signal is coming from inside the black hole?" Maya nodded, her fingers hovering over the controls. "It appears so. The signal is being bent by the gravity of the black hole, but it's too precise to be a natural phenomenon. Something, meant for us to find this." A shiver ran down Cross's spine. Humanity's exploration of the stars had always been driven by curiosity, but this was something different. This was an invitation to the unknown, an invitation that could change everything. "Plot a course. We're going in," Cross ordered. His voice, though firm, carried an undercurrent of hesitation. The Crimson Dawn was humanity's finest deep space vessel, but no ship had ever ventured so close to a black hole and returned unscathed. Still, the signal was too intriguing to ignore. The potential for discovery was immense. The crew, a seasoned mix of explorers and scientists, worked quickly to prepare the ship for the treacherous journey. The Crimson Dawn's engines hummed to life, and its sleek form cut through the blackness of space, heading toward Beta 7. Hours passed, and the tension on board grew. Cross stood at the helm, his eyes fixed on the approaching event horizon, a swirling mass of darkness and light. The signal continued to pulse, drawing them closer, its rhythm now louder and more insistent. Suddenly, the ship's sensors blared an alarm. "Captain, something's happening," Maya shouted, her hands flying over the controls. "The signal, it's changing." Before anyone could react, the ship lurched violently, throwing crew members off balance. Red lights flashed across the deck as alarms blared throughout the ship. The stars outside warped and twisted, the fabric of space-time distorting as the Crimson Dawn was pulled toward the black hole's edge. "Full reverse, power to the thrusters," Cross ordered, his voice filled with urgency. The crew scrambled to regain control, but the ship's systems began to fail one by one, the gravitational forces too strong. And then, as quickly as it began, the chaos stopped. The ship was no longer spiraling toward the black hole. They were somewhere else, somewhere beyond the familiar stars, surrounded by a glowing violet energy field that stretched across the void. The signal had stopped. The artifact was gone. "We're not in Beta 7 anymore," Maya said, her voice trembling. She stared at the readouts in disbelief. Cross took a deep breath, gripping the edge of the command chair. The Crimson Dawn was alive, but something had changed. The signal had led them into a different realm, a place no human had ever seen. "Prepare to make contact," Cross said, his voice steady. "We've entered uncharted space. Whatever this is, it's far more than just a signal. It's a warning or a message." And for the first time in his career, Captain Aiden Cross couldn't shake the feeling that humanity had just crossed a line, one that could change the galaxy forever. The ship drifted in the strange, violet-tinted void. The stars that had once filled the vastness of space were now absent, replaced by swirling energy patterns that defied every known law of physics. The Crimson Dawn had stopped moving, its engines eerily quiet. There was no propulsion, no external force guiding them. They were simply suspended in place, as if the universe itself had paused. "Captain," Maya's voice came through the intercom again, shaking with a mix of awe and apprehension. "I'm detecting something. I can't explain it. The energy field, it's alive." Cross, standing at the command console, glanced at the readouts, his eyes narrowing. "What do you mean, alive?" Maya hesitated, her fingers poised over her controls. "I don't know. It's not like any energy signature I've ever seen. It's changing, reacting to our presence. It's almost as if it's aware of us." A ripple ran through the energy field, as though it were breathing. The sensation was unsettling, like the ship had been caught in the pulse of a living organism. "Captain, I'm picking up multiple readings. I can't isolate them. They're all converging on our position," Maya added, her voice thick with tension. "Whatever this is, it's not just a field. There's something out there." Before Cross could respond, the ship's hull shuddered with a low, resonating hum. The lights flickered. A sudden vibration rippled through the Crimson Dawn, reverberating from deep within the ship. The crew instinctively braced themselves, unsure of what was to come. Suddenly, the entire ship seemed to glow. The violet energy began to form a series of intricate patterns around the vessel, lines of light coalescing into shapes, seemingly purposeful in their design. They wrapped the ship in an ethereal web, and then a low voice echoed through the Crimson Dawn's comm system. It was clear, ancient, and unmistakably alien. "You have come," it said, its tone both welcoming and grave. "Humanity has crossed the threshold." The crew froze, exchanging uneasy glances. The voice had come from nowhere and everywhere. Who are you?" Cross asked, his voice steady despite the uncertainty gnawing at him. His eyes flicked to the comms panel as if searching for an answer. A new pattern of light began to form in the center of the bridge. It materialized as a shape, an image. A humanoid figure appeared, its body composed of shifting light, too perfect to be organic, too complex to be artificial. It stood tall and regal, radiating a presence that commanded attention. "We are the heralds," the figure spoke, its voice resonating through every part of the ship, as if it existed within their minds. "We have waited for you." The crew of the Crimson Dawn watched in stunned silence. Cross couldn't help but feel the weight of the words. The heralds had been waiting for humanity. How long had they known? How long had they been watching? "Why?" Cross asked, his tone a mix of disbelief and curiosity. "Why have you waited for us?" "The Crimson Path," the herald explained, its form shifting slightly with each word, as if it were communicating through the very fabric of space. It was never meant to be a secret. It was always meant to be found. The path was forged eons ago, a network of power and knowledge that can span the galaxy, linking civilizations, unlocking potential. But it requires a guide, a species that can understand its power without being consumed by it. Humanity is that species. A wave of shock rippled through the crew. Cross felt his heart pound in his chest. This was no coincidence. This had been planned. "You think we're ready for this?" he asked, voice tinged with doubt. The herald's form seemed to flicker, its energy pulse growing brighter. "You are ready, but you are not alone. Many will come for the path, and not all of them will be as noble as you." Cross narrowed his eyes. "What do you mean? Who else is out there?" The herald's voice deepened, almost sorrowful. "You will soon see. The path is more than just a gift, it is a weapon, and weapons are always coveted." Before Cross could respond, the holographic figure began to dissolve, its final words lingering in the air. "Be prepared, Captain. The universe will never be the same." The energy field around the Crimson Dawn pulsed once more, as though the herald's words were a final warning. For a moment, the ship seemed to move, as if some unknown force had taken control, pulling them deeper into the void. Cross swallowed hard. The galaxy had changed. The Crimson Dawn had crossed into uncharted space, but they weren't alone, and humanity's role in the coming storm had only just begun. The Crimson Dawn drifted deeper into the unknown, the violet energy field still swirling around them like an omnipresent veil. The crew, shaken by their encounter with the heralds, had settled into a tense silence. No one spoke of what had happened, but the weight of the conversation lingered. They were no longer just explorers. They were part of something much bigger, something that could either uplift or destroy humanity. Captain Aiden Cross stood on the bridge, staring out into the vast, empty space. The stars had returned, but the feeling of isolation remained. The power of the Crimson Path, the promise of untold knowledge and potential, still echoed in his mind. But so did the herald's warning: not all would be as noble as humanity. "Captain," Maya's voice broke through his thoughts. "I'm picking up a signal. It's from the Earth Alliance. They're requesting immediate communication." Cross straightened, his stomach tightening. He hadn't expected this so soon. They were far beyond the reach of Earth, yet here it was, a direct line from home. He nodded, signaling Maya to open the comms. The face that appeared on the screen was one he hadn't seen in years: General Lucius Varn, a senior officer within the Earth Alliance. His expression was stern, his eyes cold, but his voice was smooth, calculated. "Captain Cross," Varn's voice crackled through the comms. "I trust you found the artifact. I've been following your progress." Cross's heart sank. He knew Varn well, too well. The man was a seasoned military strategist, ambitious and ruthless. Cross had always suspected that Varn had his own designs on the galaxy's future, but hearing his voice now sent a chill through him. "We found it, General," Cross replied, trying to mask his wariness. "The signal was from the artifact. We've made contact with entities here, the Heralds. They've shown us the Crimson Path." Varn's eyes flickered with something, an almost imperceptible flash of excitement. "The Path. I've heard rumors, but nothing concrete. This is more than just a simple find, isn't it? It's an opportunity for humanity, for Earth." Cross hesitated, sensing the shift in Varn's tone. The man wasn't here to congratulate them. He was here for something else, something dangerous. "I'm not sure what you're implying, General," Cross said cautiously. "We don't fully understand the extent of the Path's power yet, and the Heralds warned us. There are others out there who'll come for it." A smirk tugged at the corner of Varn's lips. "You're naive, Captain. Of course, there will be others. But that doesn't mean humanity shouldn't seize this chance to unite the galaxy. The Earth Alliance is ready to take command of this discovery. We'll be the ones to control it. And with that power, we can bring peace, order, control." The words echoed in Cross's mind like a warning bell. Varn was already thinking in terms of domination, of using the Path as a tool of subjugation. He had no intention of sharing this power. He would take it for himself and for Earth, no matter the cost. "I can't let you do that," Cross replied, his voice firm. "The Path isn't a weapon to be wielded like that. It's not just about control, it's about understanding what it can do. We need more time." Varn's face darkened, his demeanor shifting from calculated charm to cold menace. "You've made a grave mistake, Captain. The Path belongs to humanity, to Earth. You've strayed too far from your mission, Cross, and I can't let you jeopardize this opportunity." Before Cross could respond, the comms abruptly cut off. The screen flickered, and Varn's face disappeared, replaced by static. "Captain, I'm getting unusual readings from the rear of the ship," Maya said urgently. "Something's wrong." Cross's instincts flared. He turned to the crew. "Alert the others. Prepare for possible intruders." The ship trembled slightly, a subtle but unmistakable vibration that sent a ripple of tension through the crew. Then, without warning, The lights flickered and the ship lurched violently to one side, throwing everyone off balance. "Report," Cross shouted. "Hull breach on Deck 7. Maya cried, her fingers flying over the controls. "I've detected several small craft approaching. They're Earth Alliance ships, Captain, but they're not responding to our hails." A cold realization struck Cross. Varn hadn't been talking to them out of concern. He had been giving orders. The Alliance was coming for the artifact, and they were willing to destroy anything in their way. "Prepare for evasive maneuvers," Cross barked. "We need to get out of here now." As the Crimson Dawn shuddered under another attack, Cross's mind raced. The betrayal had come faster than he'd expected, but the true battle was just beginning. The fight for the Crimson Path was no longer just about exploration, it was about survival. And now, humanity's future hung in the balance, with old allies becoming enemies, and the very essence of the path threatening to tear them apart. The Crimson Dawn shuddered violently as a series of explosions rocked the ship's outer hull. The emergency alarms blared, a cacophony of red lights flashing across the bridge. Captain Aiden Cross gripped the command console, steadying himself as the ship bucked under the assault. The Alliance was attacking. Varn's betrayal had been swift, and now Earth's military forces were closing in. "Shields are holding, but for how long?" Maya's voice was sharp with panic, her fingers working furiously to stabilize the ship's systems. "We've got multiple hostile vessels on intercept course. They're armed with heavy firepower." Cross cursed under his breath. "Can we outrun them?" Maya shook her head. "Not with the damage we've sustained. We're too slow to make the jump to hyperspace." The pressure was mounting. The Crimson Dawn had been caught in a trap, and Cross knew it. There was no escaping the Alliance fleet now, not without the right strategy and the right tools. The heralds had warned him of this, but he had never imagined it would escalate so quickly. A voice crackled over the intercom, cutting through the chaos. "Captain Cross, this is Lieutenant Vera. We've lost contact with Deck 7. There's been a breach, and we have multiple armed intruders on board. They're not just soldiers, they're commandos." Cross's heart skipped a beat. The enemy was already inside. "Get to the breach," Cross ordered, his voice cutting through the static. "Seal off Deck 7 and hold them there. We need to buy ourselves some time." Vera's voice crackled again. "Understood, Captain. We'll hold them as long as we can." As the comms went silent, Cross turned to Maya. "How long until they reach the core systems?" "Not long," Maya said grimly. "We've already lost power to several sectors. They're systematically disabling the ship's defenses." Cross clenched his fists. The Crimson Dawn had been designed to be a fortress, but Earth's military had come prepared. They were no longer fighting for control of the path. They were fighting to take it from humanity's hands, and Cross knew there was no way he could allow that. "We need to make contact with the heralds," Cross said suddenly. "We need their help." Maya looked up from her console, her eyes filled with disbelief. "The heralds? They warned us that others would come, Captain. And if they've seen what we're up against, if they've seen the way the Alliance operates, they might not want to get involved." Cross's mind raced. Maya was right. The heralds had made it clear that humanity wasn't the only one interested in the Crimson Path, but they hadn't warned him that Earth's government would act so decisively. The Alliance had already shown their willingness to betray their own people for power, and the heralds had never made it clear whether they saw humanity as worthy of their trust. "We have no choice," Cross said, his voice hard. "We either get their help, or we die here." Maya hesitated, but then nodded. She initiated a deep signal scan, trying to reach the heralds once more, but the field surrounding them was still distorted, chaotic, like the very laws of reality were bending under the pressure of the black hole nearby. Cross knew it would take time they didn't have. Suddenly, the ship's lights flickered again, and the intercom crackled to life. This time, it wasn't a voice from the crew. Captain Cross came a calm, otherworldly voice, the herald's voice. You have crossed a threshold you cannot undo. The power of the path is within you, but so is the threat of those who would misuse it. Do not trust those who seek to control it. They will destroy you and themselves in the process. Cross's pulse quickened. The heralds were speaking directly to him. They knew the alliance was closing in, and they knew the stakes. We understand, Cross said, his voice steady, though his mind raced. We need your assistance. The alliance has turned on us. They want to take control of the path. The path cannot be controlled by one, Captain. It was never meant to be wielded by a single force. It is a network, a conduit. And now that you have begun your journey, it will be yours to protect. A low hum reverberated through the crimson dawn, a vibration that seemed to resonate within the very structure of the ship. Cross felt a surge of energy pulse through him, intense, foreign, yet oddly familiar. The path was awakening, and its potential was beginning to unfold within the ship's systems. The Alliance will not stop, Cross said, his grip tightening on the console. They will destroy the Crimson Dawn to get to the path. We need your power to protect humanity, and to prevent this from becoming a war. The voice of the heralds softened, but it carried an edge of finality. We will not protect you forever, Captain. The decision is yours, but remember, those who wield the path must understand its cost. It will not tolerate corruption. With that, the connection went silent. The power within the Crimson Dawn surged again, and Cross felt a shift, like the ship itself had awakened, becoming something more than just metal and circuitry. It was alive, connected to something beyond. The battle had begun, but this time, the Crimson Dawn wasn't alone. The heralds had spoken, and their warning was clear. Humanity stood at a precipice, and the decisions they made now would determine whether the path saved them or led them to their doom. The Crimson Dawn groaned under the relentless assault of the Earth Alliance's forces. The hull was scared with impacts, and the ship's once pristine systems now flickered erratically. The intruders had breached multiple levels, and though the crew was fighting back, they were outnumbered and outgunned. Every second that passed made it clearer they were losing the battle. Captain, Maya's voice crackled over the intercom. We've got one more chance. The Herald's power, it's starting to affect the ship's systems. It's allowing us to access parts of the path that were previously locked. Can we weaponize it? Cross asked, his voice tight with urgency. He wasn't sure whether to be elated or terrified. The path had opened, but the consequences of unlocking its power were still unknown. Maya hesitated. I think so. It's like the ship itself is, syncing with the path. But the more we use it, the more unpredictable it gets. Cross looked at the viewport. Earth's warships loomed ahead, their weapons aimed and ready to fire. Time was running out. Do it, he ordered. We need everything we've got. Maya's fingers flew across the console, accessing the unknown systems now available to her. A low hum filled the bridge as the energy around the Crimson Dawn seemed to swell, its pulse growing in intensity. The heralds had said the path was more than a conduit, it was a living force. And now, they were tapping into it, giving the ship a power that felt beyond anything humanity had ever harnessed. Suddenly, a deep, resonating voice boomed from the ship's speakers. It wasn't the herald's voice, but something far more ominous, something that felt like it came from the ship itself, or perhaps the path itself. Prepare yourselves, Captain. The balance must be maintained. Cross tensed, feeling the weight of the words. He wasn't sure if the ship or the path was speaking, but he knew this wasn't just a warning. It was a reminder. The cost of this power was steep, and they were playing a dangerous game. We don't have time for balance, Cross muttered, turning toward the tactical console. Activate the path systems now, Maya. We need to fight back. The ship's systems thrummed with newfound energy, and Maya's fingers danced across the controls. In response, the ship's external hull began to glow with a brilliant red aura, the energy drawn from the path's power. It was as if the Crimson Dawn had become part of the energy field itself, shifting in ways no ship had ever moved before. Direct hit on the aft shields. Maya shouted. They're weakening. Cross gritted his teeth. They had to strike first. The enemy had the advantage of numbers and firepower, but now, with the path flowing through the Crimson Dawn, they had something else. Power, and that was something they could use. Prepare to fire, Cross commanded. The Crimson Dawn shook again as enemy fire hammered into its shields. Cross's eyes flicked to the viewport. The Alliance ships were closing in, their guns blazing. It was a massacre waiting to happen. Captain, Maya said, her voice strained, I'm not sure how much longer we can hold this connection to the path. It's unstable. We're pushing it too far. I don't have a choice, Cross replied through gritted teeth. We fight, or we die. A crackling sound surged from the Crimson Dawn's energy conduits. The ship lurched, and the entire hull seemed to vibrate with an intense surge of power. Then, with a deafening roar, the ship unleashed a burst of energy from its core, a massive shockwave of raw, crimson energy that tore through space like a storm. The blast ripped through the enemy vessels with terrifying force. Shields shattered, hulls buckled, and ships exploded in a blaze of fire and debris. The sheer intensity of the energy was unlike anything the Alliance had ever faced. It wasn't just destructive. It was as if the very fabric of space itself had been warped, torn apart by the energy of the path. But the price was immediate. The Crimson Dawn shuddered violently as the energy coursed through its systems, and the ship began to list to one side. The artificial gravity flickered, throwing the crew off balance. Captain, we're losing control, Maya shouted. The path's power is too much. It's destabilizing the ship's core. Cross slammed his fist into the console. They'd done it. They'd fought back. But now they were on the verge of losing everything. Maya, get us out of here, he shouted. Activate the hyperdrive now. Maya frantically typed in commands, her hands shaking. I can't. Something's blocking it. The path it's interfering. Then we fight, Cross said, his voice hard. We don't run from this. Not now, not after everything we've just done. The Crimson Dawn's crew scrambled to stabilize the ship, but the damage was too great. The energy from the path was still coursing through their systems, and the ship was buckling under the strain. The Alliance was regrouping, their remaining ships closing in for the final blow. But as Cross looked out at the enemy fleet, something within him hardened. He wasn't just fighting for survival anymore. He was fighting for humanity's future, and he would do whatever it took to protect it. The fate of the galaxy rested in their hands, and this battle would decide whether they would rise or fall. The Crimson Dawn's hull trembled violently, but Captain Aiden Cross refused to give in. The Alliance's remaining ships were converging, their weapons primed for the final assault. Despite the cataclysmic burst of energy they had just unleashed, the Crimson Dawn was now drifting, barely holding together. Maya's hands flew over the controls, but the ship's systems were rapidly deteriorating under the strain of the path's unstable power. Captain, we're running out of options, Maya said, her voice tight with desperation. The ship is critical. We can't take much more damage. Cross's mind raced. They had just torn through the enemy fleet with a single shot, yet here they were, stranded in the jaws of a much larger threat. Earth's forces weren't going to back off, and without a clear path forward, it was only a matter of time before they were overwhelmed. Can we access the path's energy directly? We need to send another wave, something to cripple them for good, Cross said, his voice cutting through the chaos. Maya hesitated, her eyes flicking between the flashing diagnostics and the approaching Alliance ships. It's too risky. The ship can't handle another blast of that magnitude, not without completely collapsing. We might not survive the second wave. But we don't survive if we don't act, Cross shot back. I'm not letting the Alliance take control of the path, not like this. Maya looked at him, her eyes filled with uncertainty. She knew the consequences of another power surge, but she also knew the cost of inaction. The ship was falling apart around them, and time was slipping away. "Fine," she said, taking a deep breath. "I'll reroute the power. We don't have much time, Captain. If we do this, it's all or nothing." Before Cross could respond, the ship jolted again. The sound of impact reverberated through the crimson dawn. A section of the hull had been pierced, and the atmosphere began to leak out. The enemy had finally reached them. "Prepare for boarding parties," Cross shouted. "We're not letting them take this ship." The crew scrambled, securing doors and stations, preparing for the chaos that was about to unfold. Cross turned to Maya, who was already working feverishly to channel more power from the path into the ship's systems. The ship lurched again, harder this time, sending crew members tumbling to the floor. Through the viewport, Cross saw the Alliance's boarding craft descending. Dozens of them. They had arrived. "Captain," Maya's voice rang out, strained and focused. "I've rerouted the power, but it's going to take everything we have left. Get to the defense grid. I'll handle the rest." Cross nodded, his jaw set in grim determination. "Go." He sprinted through the corridors, moving faster than the ship's shaking would allow. He could hear the chaos ahead, gunfire, shouts, and the clatter of boots on metal. The Alliance's forces were coming. As he reached the control center for the defense grid, Cross slammed his hand on the activation panel. The ship's internal security systems flickered to life, and the automated defenses began locking down critical access points. The remaining crew members, their weapons drawn, stood ready to face the enemy. Through the doors, Cross saw the first wave of enemy soldiers, armed, dangerous, and fully equipped for a boarding operation. There were too many of them. The door slid open, and without hesitation, Cross and his crew opened fire. Blasts of energy rang out as the enemy charged, their heavy armor absorbing the impact. Cross fought with everything he had, his thoughts clear but his body working on instinct. He had trained for this moment. The Alliance may have been many, but humanity had learned to fight. They had learned to survive. Maya's voice crackled through his earpiece. "I'm doing it, Captain. The path's energy is aligning. We're ready." Cross's pulse quickened. The enemy was almost upon him, but the surge of power from the path had begun to take effect. His comms buzzed with static, then a clear voice rang through. "Captain, this is the Heralds," it said, calm yet laden with urgency. "The path is ready. You must choose. Do not let the path fall into the wrong hands. The future of the galaxy depends on your decision." Cross's heart skipped a beat. The Heralds were speaking to him, but this time the tone was different. This was not merely a warning. This was a judgment. "I understand," Cross replied, his voice steady despite the storm of chaos surrounding him. "We will protect it." Without waiting for a response, Cross activated the final sequence on the defense grid. The ship trembled violently as a massive wave of energy surged through its core, the path's power amplifying and radiating outward. A brilliant crimson light filled the corridors, and the energy blasted out from the crimson dawn in a shockwave that tore through the Alliance boarding party. The light engulfed the invaders, their forms dissolving in an instant as the energy surged through them like a force of nature. The ship rocked with the force of the blast, but the Alliance's soldiers were no more. Only silence remained in the wake of the energy wave. For a moment, Cross stood there, breathing heavily, his ears ringing with the aftermath of the power surge. He had done it. They had done it. The threat was neutralized. But as the ship's systems flickered and the path's energy began to pulse again, Cross knew the battle was far from over. The true cost of wielding such power was only beginning to reveal itself. The silence that followed the devastating energy surge was deafening. The Crimson Dawn's corridors were littered with the wreckage of Alliance soldiers, their bodies vanishing into the aftereffects of the path's unrestrained power. For a moment, Captain Cross allowed himself a brief sigh of relief. They had won the battle. The immediate threat had been extinguished, but the cost, he felt it in his bones, was far from over. "Captain," Maya's voice crackled over the intercom, filled with a tremor. "The ship's core is becoming unstable. We've tapped too deeply into the path. The energy is eating away at the Crimson Dawn from the inside." Cross slammed his fist against the wall, frustration bubbling up. "How much time do we have?" "Minutes, maybe less," Maya responded grimly. "We need to get to the core before it's too late. If we don't stabilize the energy flow, the ship will tear itself apart." The realization hit him hard. The path was not a gift, but a force of nature. They had borrowed its power, but every moment they wielded it, they risked losing control, risking more than just their lives. "Understood," Cross said, his voice cold with determination. "Get to the core. I'll hold off any other surprises." He turned to the defense grid and with a single gesture, activated the emergency lockdown. The ship's security system, now fully engaged, began sealing the remaining passageways and compartments, containing whatever threat might remain. The Alliance had been decimated for now, but Cross had learned long ago never to assume the enemy was completely defeated. Cross made his way to the ship's central command, a complex of chambers deep within the vessel, where the heart of the Crimson Dawn beat. He could already feel the ship groaning, every step forward an effort. The path had changed everything. He had only seen the briefest glimpse of its power, and yet the truth was undeniable. It was something no human had the right to control. He reached the heart of the ship just as Maya and the engineering team arrived, frantic. The hum of the ship's dying engines reverberated through the walls, the air thick with the scent of burned circuits and ionized metal. "We're too late," Maya said as she looked at the data streaming across the consoles. "The path's energy is overriding everything we know. Even the ship's core systems are starting to bend under the strain." Cross stepped forward, his gaze hardening as he assessed the situation. The energy conduits were visibly warping, threads of crimson light weaving in and out like living veins, feeding directly from the ship's reactor. The path's energy wasn't just a source of power. It was alive, conscious in a way that defied explanation. And now it was fighting for control. "We can't let it win," Cross said, his voice low and grim. "We've already seen what happens when we let the path go unchecked. We've seen what it can do to a ship, to an enemy. But we're not just fighting for this ship anymore. We're fighting for the galaxy." Maya's hands flew across the console, her brow furrowed in concentration. "If we don't contain the flow, we'll lose everything. The path will spread throughout the entire fleet. The energy will leak into the environment. This isn't just about survival anymore. This is about ensuring the path doesn't escape. If it does, it will consume all life as we know it." Cross turned to face her, meeting her gaze with unyielding resolve. "Then we stop it. We contain it, whatever it takes." The crew worked feverishly, trying to reroute the energy and lock down the ship's core systems. But the path had a mind of its own. The more they tried to stabilize the ship, the more it fought back, surging violently as if enraged by their attempts to subdue it. The walls groaned, and the ship's structure began to buckle in places, unable to withstand the growing force. "We're running out of time," one of the engineers shouted. "The core's breaking down. It's too unstable. We need to shut off the path's link, now." Maya nodded, her face pale with fear. "The only way to sever the connection is to destroy the main conduit. But that means we'll lose all access to the path's power. It's the only option left." Cross looked at her, the weight of the decision heavy on his shoulders. "Are we sure it won't destroy the ship?" "I don't know, Captain," Maya replied, her voice strained. "But it's the only chance we have. We're already out of options." The clock was ticking, the ship's systems screaming in protest as the path's energy ravaged every corner. Cross stared at the main conduit, his mind racing. They had tapped into the path to save themselves, to protect humanity. But now, the very thing they had wielded for victory was threatening to destroy everything they had fought for. "Do it," Cross ordered. "Sever the link." Maya hesitated for only a moment before pulling the final lever. There was a sudden, deafening silence. And then, the Crimson Dawn trembled violently as the core ruptured, and a shockwave of energy cascaded out, far more powerful than anything they had unleashed before. Cross gripped the console, bracing himself for impact. The air was thick with the raw energy as the ship lurched, every system spiraling out of control. The path was fighting its way free, and for the first time, Cross realized the true weight of their actions. They weren't just fighting to save the galaxy. They were fighting to hold back an unstoppable force, an ancient power that had always been waiting, watching, ready to reshape everything in its wake. The Crimson Dawn shuddered violently as the rupture in the core sent shockwaves reverberating through the ship. Sparks flew from the exposed circuits, and the once stable hum of the engines became a dissonant, fractured sound. The path's energy, now fully unleashed, had begun to escape, flowing like an uncontrollable tide through the vessel. Every second counted. Captain Cross gripped the edge of the console, his knuckles white with tension. The ship was dying. His crew was dying. But the path's energy was still alive, still pulsing with the force of 1,000 stars. The decision he had made, severing the conduit, had not brought the resolution he'd hoped for. Instead, it had only delayed the inevitable. Maya's voice echoed through his earpiece, frantic and strained. "Captain, we've lost containment. The energy is leaking into the external systems. If we don't shut it off completely, the ship will implode. We won't survive." Cross looked around, feeling the weight of their situation settling in. The Crimson Dawn was no longer just a ship. It had become a vessel of raw, unchained power. And that power was too dangerous to remain in the galaxy. They had been fortunate to harness it, but now it had become a threat greater than anything they could control. "We need to get to the backup systems," Cross said, his voice sharp with urgency. "There's one last chance to seal the path before it consumes everything." The crew was already moving, their faces grim but determined. They had been through countless battles, countless sacrifices, but this was different. This was not just a fight for survival. It was a battle for the future of humanity. The path, in all its immense, godlike power, could either be sealed forever or unleashed upon the galaxy, threatening the balance of every living being. Cross led the charge, Maya at his side, as they raced toward the backup control center. Each step felt heavier than the last, the ship groaning under the weight of the energy surging through its veins. They were close, so close, but they could already feel the pressure building, the undeniable force that the path exerted on the very fabric of reality. When they reached the control center, the sight before them was nothing short of apocalyptic. The walls crackled with raw energy, the very air charged with the power of the path. The main console, once a symbol of their triumph, was now glowing with the same crimson light that had obliterated the Alliance fleet. The energy was feeding directly from the core, and it was starting to warp the ship's systems beyond repair. "Shut it down," Maya said, her voice trembling. "We have to sever the connection completely. If we don't, it will burn everything." Cross nodded, his mind steeled with the gravity of the moment. He knew what had to be done. The path could not be allowed to exist in the galaxy any longer. It was too dangerous, even if it meant losing everything. He approached the central console, his fingers hovering over the deactivation sequence. One last choice. "This is it," Cross said, looking over at Maya. "We can either let this energy consume everything, or we can destroy it. No one else will control the path. Not the Alliance, not us. It ends here." Maya met his gaze, her eyes wide with understanding. "You're sure? We'll lose it all. The power, the knowledge, everything we fought for." Cross's heart ached with the weight of his decision. "It's the only way. We're not ready to wield this kind of power, Maya. No one is." With a deep breath, Cross initiated the shutdown sequence. The ship's core rumbled one last time, the crimson light flaring brighter before it began to fade, slowly, agonizingly. The energy, once a force that had reshaped the galaxy, began to dissipate, returning to whatever depths of the universe it had come from. For a moment, everything was still. The Crimson Dawn's systems flickered and went silent. The path was sealed, no longer a threat. The weight of the decision still hung heavily on Cross's shoulders, but he knew he had done what was necessary. They had lost the path. They had lost the power that could have rewritten everything. But in that loss, there was something else. There was hope. As the crew gathered around, staring at the now darkened console, Cross allowed himself a brief moment of peace. They had done it. They had saved the galaxy. They had chosen to stand against the overwhelming power of the path, and in doing so, had ensured that humanity's future would be written on their own terms. But deep within the heart of the Crimson Dawn, something flickered, a faint pulse of red. It was gone for now, but the path was never truly gone, not entirely. It would wait, and one day someone would seek it again. But humanity had made its choice, and as long as there was breath in their lungs, they would never stop fighting. The galaxy would not fall to the path. Not today, not ever.